Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wisdom Work with Christa and Christy. I'm Christy McCaffrey here with my co host, Christa Mantey. And today we are here to talk to you about a topic that we feel like really encompasses the wisdom work journey and the whole purpose of why we do the wisdom work journey ourselves and why we're encouraging and hoping to inspire all of you to take your own journey on this wisdom work path. And that topic is expansion. So, we're going to talk all about what each of us feels expansion means and how we've seen it play out in our own lives, and also just ways that we can continue this conversation of why the work we're doing on ourselves personally is worth it, why it's valuable, why it's necessary in order to grow and learn and live your best life. So that's what we're here to talk about today is expansion. So Krista, can you tell us what expansion means to you and how have you seen it play out in your life?
Yes. Hi, Chris. It's so good to be here. And I love closing out the year with this topic because it really does encompass so much for me. When I think about expansion, I think about the constriction of the learnings and of like the dark nights of the soul and just kind of going inward with those triggers. We always say our triggers are our teachers. So when I'm triggered, and I look in with curiosity and compassion to what's going on here for me, then that's part of the wisdom work journey, right? And then when you do the work, feeling that expansion after, and it may not be right after, but it may be a week or 2 weeks, or when you see that same person again, you may feel differently. There may be a shift that had occurred. And for me, expansion, in my mind, I was thinking about this the other day. In my mind, like I think about when I hear the word goals or when I hear the word expansion or when I hear the words like those kind of big words, I always think big things or like I have to do like a huge thing in order to feel successful or something. But for me, in my wisdom work journey, the reality is these have been like micro shifts and very, very small and miraculous. So what I mean by that is, like, for example, if I had an issue with this one person and I was getting triggered every time I saw them. Well, after doing a lot of the work, I would see them again and I felt totally at peace. There was no trigger. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. Like that's expansion for me, knowing that that person was such a hard person to be around, but because I did the internal shifting and the prayer and the meditation and the journaling and all the things, meeting with all these therapists and healers and things like that, for me, that works. And sending that person a lot of love in the background, like on the inner plane, I call it, through meditation, through prayer, not really having conversations out loud, sometimes if I need to, but then showing up in a way that felt really authentic to me with love and just being there in the present moment as opposed to thinking about all the crap that had happened in our relationship prior, but just being there in the moment and seeing like how does this moment unfold. And to me, that was like the most beautiful expansion of all because I was able to just show up clear and clean and be able to start sowing these seeds of love into our new relationship. So it's like, for me, that's like the most powerful example because it's small. Like for me, that would have been really overlooked in my past, but because it had been such a deep wound and continued to be picked, that scab was picked every time I would see this person. Um, the fact that it felt neutral eventually was like incredible to me.
That's huge. That's I
It's
know that you're
huge.
I know what you mean by saying it's like a micro thing and it feels small, but the truth is that's huge
Hmm.
because we do overlook all of those kind of issues or moments in our lives when we could look at it and realize and accept and appreciate that something major just happened.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just get so caught in, exactly what you're saying, like that backward view, looking in the rear view mirror and thinking, just ruminating about all of the things that, well, she said this, he said that, we did, we had this argument, just like, I think lots of people, we all fall victim to it. We just get stuck in these cycles
Mhm.
of bringing up old stuff and torturing ourselves with it. But Chris, I love what you're saying is that you were intentional with the work you were doing, not knowing what the outcome would be, right? And that
Right.
really important point that when we start to do this work intentionally, you do kind of have to accept that I don't know if this is going to shift this at all for me or for the other person. I don't know what will come of this. All I know is that I need to have faith that this work needs to be done, maybe just for yourself, first of all, like, to free yourself of the pain or the weight of whatever that was triggering in you. And as you just make these small choices, it did result in a big moment to be
Mhm.
able to face someone that normally would trigger you and feel complete and utter peace with them. That is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I
Now
think
that you
that
say
that's
it
just
like
what's
that.
so important about the process.
Yes. So true.
It really
So,
is.
Chris, how does it work for you? What do you think about expansion, or what insights do you have to share with us?
So for me, when I think of expansion, I do also think like big and uh massive, but I actually envision like space, creating space. So all these little things that I'm trying to work on, like the person that triggers you or the situation that drives you insane or the things that I'm afraid of, or like when I start to tackle these little things, especially when they just come up, when you're not actually even looking for the lesson, you're not looking to necessarily be like whacked over the head with some major life lesson. Um, but I've learned that expansion to me is choosing to see those moments as opportunities for growth along my path. And that when I decide to do the work and either meditate on it or um, forgiveness has been a major one that I've been working on recently. Again, I'm going to keep bringing up this book that I was reading and I just finished, but that book, the 6 phase meditation book, that's part of the meditation practice is every day you go through this process of like you're envisioning first someone you bring to mind somebody that you absolutely love, like someone that just like fills your heart up. And for me, it's usually sometimes like my kids. I think like thinking of your child just like makes your heart feel so warm, right? And then you're guided in the meditation to like imagine that the compassion that you feel for that person going throughout your body, moving throughout the house or the place that you're in, moving throughout the town, then the city, then the state, then the country, then the whole world. Okay. So that compassionate piece. Then there's other steps to it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's, you're envisioning things that you want for your future. You're appreciating and showing gratitude for things about yourself that you're grateful for. And then forgiveness is a big piece. You're bringing somebody to mind or a situation to mind and focusing on, first you focus on what really bothers you about the situation, right? Like bring it up, envision that person standing in front of you. You're guided to do it in like imagine doing it in a safe place, like on a beach or in a garden or somewhere where you feel safe. You bring that person into mind and you just let all this stuff come up that really, really, for lack of a better word, pisses you off, whatever it is that you need to forgive in that person. You're bringing it all up and then you're asked to try to see it as best you can from that person's perspective, right?
Mm.
Try to see all the things in their life experience that led to how they're showing up right now. And can you have compassion for that? Can you have compassion for, okay, they did something to hurt me, but can I have compassion for what got them there?
Mm.
And then you're asked to forgive them and just like focus on trying to forgive them. If you feel like you can envision yourself giving them a hug, that's like the ultimate goal
Wow.
is be able to envision yourself hugging that person. So it could take you like weeks of doing this meditation before you actually feel like you can hug the person and release it. But I'm telling you, this has been huge for me. And
Wow.
exciting in the sense that, and it's going to come back to my point that I started, got a little off topic here, but you'll see where I'm going about expansion, because what I've learned about forgiveness is that they're actually doing like all sorts of amazing studies about what happens in our brain when we focus on forgiveness, and then what happens actually energetically when you focus on forgiveness, that you're actually clearing so much space in your brain and in your energy field because you're releasing, you know,
Wow.
the weight. And I mean, I would want anybody to go and like look at the research yourself, because I won't quote it correctly or accurately, but I was blown away as I was reading about it that literally they're studying this, that people are like focusing on a forgiveness practice, like heavily focusing on a forgiveness practice, and they are attracting like incredible experiences and opportunities and circumstances, because what you've done is created energetic space. So when I think of expansion, that's what I think of. I feel like I have just been clearing and clearing and clearing space within my energy field so that I'm moving closer every day towards whatever is meant for me. I'm just right now, I take it as my job is to make space for it. My job is to keep healing myself, undoing anything that's stuck emotionally, forgiving the hell out of every person that I've ever encountered in my whole life, including myself. And I'm going in on this forgiveness practice because honestly, I really do already feel a shift. And
Wow.
I've started to take it into, I was telling Krista this earlier, I've started to take it into that that model that I've talked about a lot over the past year, of this diagram of thinking as yourself at the center, and then there's a ring outside of that that's like, for me, it's my husband and my kids. Outside of that, it's like my immediate family. Outside of that, friends. Outside of that, neighbors, like, and it just keeps, that's how I envision like who's allowed to get closest to me, to my truth. And I've started to take this compassion and forgiveness practice into that. And it's been amazing,
Mhm.
focusing first on myself and being grateful for what I can be grateful for about myself, having compassion and forgiveness for myself, then moving on to all of these people that are in my life experience. And I guess I'm now, it's still a discovery phase. I'm excited to see what comes from this. You know, I've been practicing it, and I've also been getting hit with a lot of hard stuff. Like it's all, I think you're calling it in basically. Like you're calling it in when you start to do this work. And that's tough. I think we always talk about how, this work is not easy and we're never going to pretend like it is. It is really hard to sit with the moments when they come. But expansion to me is, it's worth doing that because I feel lighter and lighter and lighter with every single week that passes, month that passes, and year that passes that I've been working on myself. And I'm just creating more space. And there's one more thing I wanted to bring up. I know I'm long-winded in this explanation here, but
I love
uh,
it.
I was telling Krista also that I was listening to a podcast interview. It was Oprah and this woman, Elizabeth Lesser. She's the co-founder of the Omega Institute. And Elizabeth Lesser was saying spiritual growth isn't about getting anything. It's about uncovering. Your soul is covered by 1,000 veils, she said. And I absolutely loved that. It hit me so hard when I heard it. That is how I like to envision it. Is just, we've talked about peeling the onion layers, it's just taking back the layers of whatever is weighing you down, the
Mhm.
heavy emotions, the painful experiences, the disappointments in your life. All of that has created this layer of, as she says, 1,000 veils. And your journey now, if you choose to accept it, is to start peeling that back. And that as time goes on, that Oprah asked her, does it ever get easier, the spiritual path? And she said, yes, definitely. It's a practice, but with time it gets easier. And I
Woo!
love that. I love that because I think that we need some hope. when we're on this path, you need to know that it does get easier. And if I'm honest with myself in retrospect, it has gotten easier. I get annoyed that sometimes the same lessons keep hitting me over the head, but clearly I haven't completely learned what I needed to learn. But I do still feel if I think back to a certain situation that is still coming up for me, and I think back to the beginning when I first started working on it, I feel a million times better than I did then. It may
Yeah.
not be completely healed, but I feel a lot better. And I think that's the point. And that's the purpose for me of working towards expansion, is to create more space.
Mm, wow. Standing ovation. Loved every single word you just
That
said.
was really long-winded. I'm
It was
sorry.
amazing. I could listen to you all day. It's so packed with nuggets and wisdom and patience and appreciation for the journey and the process because that's what we are on, right? It's not a destination. We're never going to get there. We're never going to figure it all out. We're never going to have no more work to do. Like as long as this body is still breathing and heart is beating, like we're going to have to do the work. So I think setting people's expectations for that is very important. Like we aren't working to get somewhere, but
Mhm.
just like Elizabeth Lesser says, it's like we're working to meet ourselves, like our true selves, and to unpeel those layers of the socialization and the culture and all the brainwashing that we've been put through with some best intentions, like with family and friends and socializing, but sometimes it's not for the best of intentions. And we have to navigate that in our own minds. I was just talking to a client about this yesterday around um, you know, th- she said, I feel so much guilt when I say no. And I was
Mhm.
like, girl, I hear you. I see you and I hear you. But you got to say no. You got to start saying no to things that don't serve you or that you don't really want to do. If it's not a full hell yes, it's a no
Mhm.
because nobody wants half of your life. Everybody wants you fully present there, wherever you're going to go or whatever you're going to do. And it's not fair to bring half of you and a big bag of resentment with you to the thing. And I was like, I've done that for my most of my life. So I get it. I totally get it. I'm a recovering people pleaser, the whole thing. We went into all this. I'm going to send her the link on Wisdom Work Boundaries episode, but what
Dive
I'm
into
going to,
this.
yeah, your spare time. Um, but what I'm thinking was like this is so pervasive throughout the culture. That's why I'm so glad we have this, Chris, and that we're talking about this publicly for whoever's listening. I just appreciate it. And the main message I want to get across is your birthright is joy. Your birthright is total bliss and freedom and just feeling the expansion of that. And just thinking of like a little baby laughing. Like when, if you can imagine, like when one of the parents is like throwing them up in the air and they're like giggling, and like that's what I imagine all our souls are doing or want to be doing. But we put so much garbage on top of them, or like you're saying, these different layers of like, well, I can't, oh, I shouldn't, oh, I can't do this, oh, I can't, well, no, what are they going to think of me? And it's like, okay, these are just thoughts. We have to question each thought, which takes a
Mhm.
lot of time. That's why I think meditation is so beautiful, is that it really provides you this witness perspective as opposed to feeling so attached to the thinking. And I remember like way back when, probably like 20, maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would get really attached to the thoughts and I'd get really into the story and I would get even more worked up and I would ruminate constantly and be like, just days and months. And it just felt like forever that I was wrapped up in this story that I made up or whatever the situation was. And I just I couldn't release myself from it.
Mhm.
And consciously, I'd say I've been on the path for a long time, but I think consciously I like stepped on, um, just a few years ago. And when I chose to do this consciously, I was like, the main motivation was I want freedom. I feel like I'm not free. I feel like I'm living my life for everyone else and I feel like I can't say yes to myself and what I need because I feel bad. And that's not okay with me anymore. Like I'm ready to change. So for me, that was like my turning point was I really wanted freedom or expansion, you could say, like that same feeling of just nobody's saying anything about me or not. They can say it, but I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yes.
not sticking to my decisions aren't being based in those thoughts of other people or the perceived thoughts of other people, which is even worse. Like they don't even say anything. It's just in my head.
Oh my God. We do that so much. We
So
all do
much.
it so much. We project these stories and these narratives that sometimes or a lot of times aren't even true.
Right.
But and
Right.
then you said, Chris, and I'm so glad. I love everything you just said, and I'm so glad that you said about how like years ago you would be stuck in this loop,
Yeah.
days, weeks. And it's exhausting. I think I've also come to realize that yes, my commitment to this inner work has been deepened so much and fueled by the fact that I'm tired
Right.
of the disease to please. You know,
Yes.
I am tired of trying to, if I look back, I realize, especially now that I can honestly say so much of it I've shifted and healed and come to terms with, and now I do feel a lot lighter. Now I look back on it and I think, "Oh my God, you were just so wrapped up in approval and
Mhm.
manipulating the way that you were perceived." I
Mhm.
put so much energy into making sure that in every scenario I was in, I would be respected, I would be approved of, and I would be, just seen in the light that I wanted to be seen in. But the problem there is that it gets exhausting,
Mhm.
so, so tiring. And then if you hit that breaking point and you do realize that there's this way to undo it, then that does become your motivation. Your motivation becomes freedom. Exactly what you were saying, Chris. Your motivation becomes, I just want to breathe. I
Yes.
feel like I can't breathe even when I think back to all the ways that I was so freaking stuck in the disease to please and so stuck in just putting so much energy into, how I would be perceived or,
Mhm.
it actually keeps you so stuck and weighted down and heavy. And like I said, I can feel it on my chest while we're talking about it, even though I don't really experience it like I used to, but it's coming right back to me right now.
Mhm.
The truth is, what was happening there was that my truest self didn't stand a chance. It didn't stand a chance of being free,
Yeah.
you know, because the only way out is through, right? I literally had to go through all of this undoing to get to a place where I can honestly tell you now, I have made inner peace my priority for a long time now, and it's paying off big time.
Yay. I
It
love
just
hearing that.
becomes that you don't have time for the bullshit.
Right.
And I'm sorry to say that's the only way to say it. Like,
Yeah.
you just don't, and you don't have time or energy for that whole process we were just talking about of ruminating over all the things and, well, she said this and she said that and she thinks this
Yeah.
about me and that, I'm human, so I still have those moments. But
Mhm.
what's fascinating to me is that, and it just happened to me recently, um, I was stuck in that process and it was heavy and it was so uncomfortable. Um, but I was so motivated to get out of it
Yeah.
quicker because I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no. I hate this feeling. I do, but I know how to get out of it." Okay. So then I start forgiving. I started forgiving the hell out of the individual that I was triggered by. I started
Mm.
forgiving the hell out of the situation. And in 2 days' time, I was neutral about it.
Oh, so
Right.
good.
So that is the difference here, and that is why I think Krista and I are bringing all of this up, right? Is to just help you to see that here we are, however many for Krista, she says a few years, for me, it's probably been like 7 to 10, um, that I chose this path, and it's, it's every step of the I can say it has been challenging, but now I can look back and say that was so worth all the effort I put in. It was worth the tears that I cried. It was worth the muck that I had to work through. But now that stuff is gone. Like that's the most beautiful part. Whatever I've worked up through, or whatever you've worked up through up until this point, it's behind us. And
Mhm.
we're choosing to stay present and move forward. And I that's the spot I want to encourage everybody to try to get to is, can you get to a place, this is never going to be over. The work's never going to be done. Life is always going to throw us curveballs. But don't you want to get to a place where no matter what it throws at you, you're like, I got this. And you know what?
Yeah.
My inner peace is my number one priority.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, what I want, like my goal and my intention is that I'm okay in any situation that I'm in because I know how to take care of myself. I know how
Yes.
to speak up in a kind, clear, transparent way. I know that if I'm triggered, I know I have the tools to support myself in moving through the emotion, but getting to the root of what needs to be done in a loving way. So
Yes.
here's what I'll say that I've seen and that I know a lot of people have trouble with because we get really comfortable. I think you mentioned this, Chris, in the muck. So
Mhm.
that becomes our norm. So it gets really uncomfortable and almost frightening scary when we start moving through it and start to embark on a new way of being or a new way of living or a new personality. Because, like you said, you got so used to putting on this show for people of like what you thought they wanted. And I did the same. And I was just like, okay, so now a couple years ago, like consciously stepping off of this like stage. And as Glennon Doyle says, like my representative self, no
Mhm.
more. Like I'm going to be authentic and be myself and what I want and how I'm feeling truly. But with that comes a ton of grief, like a
Mm.
ton of grief, because you're saying goodbye to what you've always known
And what was comfortable. It's
and
so
what was really
important that you're
comfortable.
saying that. Grief is the word. That is such
Yes.
a word.
So that's what I want to encourage people because I got scared. I called you. I was like, what is happening right now? Like, I am not okay. And it's okay not to be okay. Like, that's part of the process. So you
Mhm.
cannot talk. We don't talk about light without dark. We don't talk about expansion without contraction. We don't talk about these things without their counterpart. We need both. On the healing journey, you're going to have the masculine and the feminine. You're going to have the light and the dark. You're going to have the mind and the heart. You need both. We always need them both all the time, but we need to embrace both. We can't be scared of the shadow. We need to embrace it just like a little baby. Hold it with love. I love that you're saying all the compassion and the forgiveness stuff because that's exactly what we need to do with our shadow selves or with our parts of us that we've abandoned because we're like, ugh, we don't want to show that in the world. Like my narcissist tendency that I mentioned last podcast, I was like, oh God. When that came to light, I was like, okay, lots of love for this part because I don't want that part of me running the show because it's abandoned and it's going to come back with a vengeance. So that's part of it is like just loving up all of us, knowing that each part of us has been protecting us certain things from different situations. So we need to be grateful for all those different parts. They're not perfect and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to go. But when you do feel like, okay, everything's changing. I don't know who I am anymore. What do I want? Like Krista and Christy have been talking about all this wisdom work. So I've been doing it. And now all of a sudden, like I have all this space or all of this clearing. And that could be scary because
Yes,
I've worked with a
it
lot
is
of
scary.
women. And it's like, I asked them, what do you want to do for you? If you had 2 hours in your day, what would you do for you? And they're like, I don't even know.
Mm.
I don't even have hobbies. I don't even know what I like. So that's scary when we have time to actually do what we want to do, but we don't know who we are anymore or we don't know what we want to do. Start there. Start carving out time now in your day or in your lifestyle. Figure it out. What do you enjoy? Start there. What makes your soul come alive? What gives you energy? What makes you feel so happy and alive? Because if you know that, then when you do experience all of these expansions and you will find more space and more peace in yourself, you know what to do with all that extra time.
Yes, that is really, really crucial because as Krista said, it can get scary. Change is scary. Change just is. But I think that we can get so comfortable, as Krista had mentioned, in the just doing what we've always done, operating as we always have. Also, because lots of what we see around us are people doing the exact same thing. So we don't love the way it makes us feel, but it's comfortable. So, and I don't know what's on the other side of that. I don't know what life would look like if I didn't operate this way, even if I can admit it doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
And also to speak to the piece about forgiveness, I think that people hold themselves back a lot, and I am super guilty of it over the years myself, with this notion that forgiveness means somebody said they were sorry. And that is not really what's going to clear things for you. We do think that that's the answer, right? Well, if they just apologize, then I'd feel better. But the truth is, you're holding yourself hostage by not just taking matters into your own hands and deciding to forgive them before you get an I'm sorry, because you may never get it. But even if you do, it will not free you the same way it would if you chose to let
Mhm.
it go yourself first.
Beautiful. That's so powerful.
Like it's about forgiveness. And I've heard this a million different ways from other thought leaders, but forgiveness is about wanting to feel free yourself. It's
Mhm.
not about the other person. So you don't need their I'm sorry. And when you choose to forgive them, you're taking that power back within yourself. Just as Krista said, like, I just want to know that no matter what happens, I'm equipped to handle it because I know how to take care of myself. So
Mhm.
part of taking care of myself is immediately forgiving when I feel like it's hardest to, right?
Right.
And it
Oh.
doesn't mean that you're saying what you did is okay, what the person did to you is okay, um, that the atrocities that happen in this world that seem unforgivable, that they're okay. No, it just means that for your own inner peace, for your own benefit, let it go. For you have to forgive the person, the situation, the circumstance to let it go for your own health, your own mental health. And then what that does is exactly what we're talking about. It ignites expansion. When you choose to forgive something that's really hard for you to forgive, or you just choose to take that power back for yourself, you're choosing expansion. You're choosing to create more like free and open space within yourself to attract more of what is really aligned for you, what you really want, and what actually is beneficial for you. And I also think that in time, this forgiveness practice probably becomes a habit that's just you just become good at it. You can easily forgive and then you're not carrying around all the weight that many of us have carried for our entire lives,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's where I did want to talk, about the hope that is you know triggered in all of this, like especially heading into the new year, like Chris, what would you say, is the best way to kind of look at this wisdom work process in the topic of expansion, and move forward into 2023 in a hopeful way?
Mm. What a powerful question. I think everybody can journal about this for themselves. And I think it's so valuable to have this conversation in December with holidays, with people that may trigger us a lot, being able to talk about forgiveness, being able to talk about hope, being able to talk about freedom, joy, what makes you feel alive. Like the heading into the new year, we're going to we will be bombarded with the weight loss gimmicks and the get healthy and the intention setting and the goal setting and all of that. And it's all well and good, but here's what I'll ask. Get really quiet within yourself. The time right now is there's a lot going on in the external world. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of hustle, there's a lot of swirl with energy. Find the peace within you, whether it's in a quiet room or in the bath or a walk in nature or talking to a good friend or journaling. Find some quiet and really reflect on the year and be grateful for all that you've done this year. Because we talk about this a lot, Christy and I, where we're always thinking ahead, we're go-getters, we're ambitious women, but it's been so important and impactful in our lives to be reflecting on the things that we actually did do or that we were proud of or that we appreciated about this year or this week or our our partners or whatever. So first do that, like really reflect, recap the whole year and think about all the highlights and all the things you did well and all the things maybe you didn't like or maybe you didn't do well. Then, with the intention of going into the new year with a fresh start and hope, put that hope lens on. And what do you hope for? What do you wish for? What do you want this year? What do you want to feel this year? Um, how do you want to feel supported? Maybe it's getting more help around the house so that you have the freedom to do something that you enjoy doing more, or help with the kids more, enlisting more help with the kids, or whatever it may be, figuring that out for you. Everybody's going to be different, but having the freedom to dream and having the freedom to put your desires and your wishes down on paper. Because when we talk about this expansion, when we talk about the wisdom work, we're mining and we're fertilizing the soil for our deep desires to come to fruition. So it's very, very important and almost a sacred practice to be clearly thinking and intending on what we want the outcome to be or what we want life to look like. And the funny part is, usually it gets even better than what you have envisioned, which is really cool. So that's the hope that I can leave everybody with. So I hope everyone's deep desires come true and even more than you've ever imagined this year and going forward.
I love that. And the freedom to dream.
Yes.
Great little phrase, the freedom to dream. I think that that's all the hope you need headed into a new year, is to give yourself the freedom to dream of what you really want. And as we talk about reflecting, reflect on all of those moments that were really tough for you this year, whatever it is that you worked through, that you had the courage to work through, and realize for yourself that that means you created space. You
Mm.
created more space. You expanded in those moments, whether you realize it or not. When you worked through something tough and you stayed in it and you did your side of the work, because that's a part of it too, is we can only do this work for ourselves. We can only hope that it inspires the people around us to do their own, but you can't do it for them. So think about how the work you've done has created space for you, and that space is now going to make way for you to have that freedom to dream. Dream up the biggest dreams you could ever hope for yourself, and keep in that dream this work. That would be my tip headed into the new year, is let whatever you're dreaming big about, whatever you're hopeful for, keep this practice, this personal growth, spiritual journey, this inner work, keep that as a top priority, because the more you do it, the bigger those dreams, the bigger space those dreams have to actualize. And they will. They will. And like
Mhm.
Krista said, they may end up coming at you in a magnitude that you never could have imagined. I say that to myself all the time, especially as I'm in the muck. It's like, well, if the mud that I'm standing in is up to my knees, then the magnitude of what's coming my way once I get through it must be pretty major, right?
Totally. I
Because
love that.
you need that hope. You need that layer, that aspect that gets you through the tough times to know that you're working towards a more expansive way of living, a more beautiful and free way of living. And I think that Krista and I want nothing more than for every single person that's listening to this podcast to feel supported and encouraged and inspired in whatever it is that you hope for in your life. We want nothing more than for you to get there, to access every bit of love and joy and peace and opportunity and just every wonderful experience that could happen for you. We want that for you too. So, that being said, I think we need to just acknowledge that we are closing out a beautiful year together here, Chris. I can't even believe that we've been doing this for as long as we have, and it honestly just keeps getting better and better.
It
Sit
does.
down at this computer to record our conversations, and every time I feel so blessed to be able to have these conversations and to have our listeners care to listen to what we have to talk about, and I hope that we're serving you in some or many ways with these conversations.
Same. So grateful for you, Chris, and all of our listeners in this beautiful community. You help us stay on our path and keep us honest. So we want to hear from you. Obviously, we always love hearing your feedback, but we want to hear about your dreams. So please email us at thewisdomwork@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram at the Wisdom Work, or at our personal handles. But just let us know what you're intending going into this new year, what you're proud of from the year past, and all of the things. We want to hear from you. So have a
And hopefully
wonderful
in the new
holiday.
year, we can maybe plan another little virtual retreat of some sort.
Yes, I want one on forgiveness. All this talk, I
Yes.
want to do that. Yeah,
I think that would be a really good one.
let's
And
do it.
last year when we did it, it felt like it was a good time to do it in the beginning of the year to just kind of get
Yes,
everybody on a good page to move forward. So Krista and I will talk about that. We'll let you know about any details, but happy holidays, happy new year from Krista and I, and just know how grateful we are. And stay tuned for the next episode in 2023 of the Wisdom Work with Krista and Christy.